I'm going to walk you through the answers. Line by line. So glucose, I'm going to start with glucose. Glucose, there's 128 in the blood. There's 128 in the filtrates. That meant glucose did what? It entered the nephron, right? It was in the blood, and it entered the filtrate. So that means it had to have been A. A had to occur for it to get in there. Does that make sense? Because it's in the blood, and it's after A. So glucose is filtered by the nephron for question 1. Because if I look at it, it was above A and it was below A. That proves it entered the nephron. Make sense? Okay. So tell me about albumin. Was albumin filtered?
No.
No? How'd you know that?
0.
Hold on.
0. It's in my blood and nothing is in the nephron, which means it did not enter in letter A. So albumin is not filtered, does not enter the nephron. That make sense? Because 0 means not there. How about the blood cells? Were they filtered?
No.
No, same thing. Zeros. All right, yes?
But when, in the case of the guy, they did get through because he's peeing blood.
Right, but he was tearing it after the nephron. That was post this.
Okay.
Right. So how about the salts? Did they enter the nephron? Yes, because they're in the blood and they end up in the filtrate. How about the wastes? Yes. How about the water? Okay, now we got to answer a question. Why were some of these things filtered and others not? Say it loud, own it.
Size.
Size! Let me show you an animation. I'll show you a static picture first. This is a picture showing a close-up of the blood entering my nephron. This is the nephron called the glomerulus. Right? So here are the blood capillaries. Look at this little funny picture here. I'm going to blow it up over here. This is a close-up of the capillary in my nephron. What do you see there?
Windows.
Little holes, little windows, literally in Latin. So that looks like a colander in my kitchen, right? So why doesn't my macaroni and cheese go into the sink when I strain it? Too big to fit through the hole. So if you think about what this is, the blood is inside the capillary, and things have to fit through the hole to get out of the blood and enter the nephron. So you notice the filtrate has to get through the hole. So small things can fit through the hole, big things can't. So let's go back to our data. Why doesn't the cells enter the nephron? They're too big. Why doesn't albumin enter the nephron?
Too big.
Too big. Albumin's a protein, right? Remember biology 112? They're huge. So big things don't get in. They're too big. So we can go over here and add some data. What kind of things get filtered? Small molecules, things that can fit through the holes, fit through the colander, I call it, the nephritic membrane. So small things can leave my blood and enter my nephron. Right? The big things do not. So I'm going to try to prove that to you. That sound is not anatomically correct, right? This is showing that filtration membrane, that area where things go between blood. Turn it off. I don't want to say that bit. I can listen all day. All right. So if you look carefully right here, those are those little holes, the windows, the fenestrae. Right here, here. So notice only some of the molecules can squeeze through. The big things, like the cells, can't fit. So little things get ending up in the nephron, big things do not. So you've essentially filtered the nephron from the blood. If there are grounds, coffee grounds in your coffee, that proves someone didn't have a good filter on the machine, right? That's the logic. Big stuff shouldn't be in there. So the filtration is always small stuff. You can't really do this, but pretend you could. That's like the sound. So remember biology 112, hopefully you do. You remember that glucose was a monomer. You know, that's a monomer, so those are small. Excuse me. Uric acid and creatinine are small molecules, and electrolytes are small, right? They're ions. So these are all small molecules. They can fit through the holes and enter the nephron. But proteins, cells, giant hormones, they can't fit. So you don't expect them to be in there. So one day, if you have protein or blood in your pee, someone's going to say bad, because there shouldn't be any there. That's why bleeding tells you something's wrong, because you should never have blood and protein in there. They're too big. So if you do, something is not the norm. Make sense? So the first thing to understand is only small things get into the nephron. Big things do not. Okay. So if we keep going. We did that one, right? So now I'm going to damage your colander, the filtration membrane. Kidney punch, various drugs. So I'm going to bust it open. So if I damage your filtration membrane, there are 4 choices here. Tell me which ones are true if I damage your filtration membrane. Which ones would you see?
Increased protein and presence of blood cells.
I heard something about presence of blood cells.
And protein.
Presence of protein? That's right. Big stuff will start to appear in your pee because it normally would not be in there. This is the coffee ground analogy, right? So why didn't you pick the increased glucose?
Because glucose already goes through the nephron but gets raised.
Very good. Glucose already enters the nephron. It's already small, so I would not expect that to change. Why did you pick the reduction in filtrate volume? Because probably you'll get more, right? If I make the holes bigger, more should pass through. So the only 2 ones that are abnormal would be the more protein and the more blood cells. Right? So I filter small things. Make sense? All right. So now, we're going to do a little more with the filtrations. This is a lot of big words, but what this is trying to explain is how the stuff knows to get out of the blood and into the nephron. Right? So if you read through these, you're going to see a lot of big words that all say the same thing. What's the P word?
Pressure.
Pressure. So where would the pressure come that would force stuff out of the blood into the nephron? What pressure are they talking about?
Blood pressure.
Blood pressure, right? Blood pushes out, which you learned last term. So blood pressure is pushing the fluid out of the blood through those holes into the nephron. And that's this big number they show here. So this is not anatomically correct. But this represents your blood pressure, it's the guy on the left. So the blood pressure is forcing stuff into the nephron by going through all this resistance. So I'm going to change your blood pressure. I'm going to make your blood pressure go down. What do you think will happen to the amount of fluid entering your nephron if I lower the pressure? Let's find out. So blood pressure is the main factor that affects how much fluid you can push through those holes. Right? So what we're going to do then is make a graph of this data. You're going to learn how to calculate GFR. So let's go over here and start making a graph space. Okay, the formal name is glomerular filtration rate. Just rolls off the tongue. For this class, you're just going to call it GFR. That's what everyone calls it. So on a test, say GFR. But glomerular filtration rate is what we're measuring. Well, what is it? Glad you asked. If you look at this animation again, it's the amount we're filtering. It's the amount that leaves the blood and enters the nephron. So it's the rate of filtration. So it's the letter A thing. We're measuring letter A on our 3 steps. So GFR is a measurement of the rate of filtration. So I'm going to click it one more time so you can watch it in all its excitement. So if I caught the fluid that's entering the nephron over a minute, I would have a measurement of the rate of filtration. Make sense? All right. So what's more interesting is this part. So we have Susie on the left. We've hooked her up to, or we found her kidney. We hooked up her nephrons to this patented GFR meter, right? And we're trying to measure how much GFR is occurring in her body. So right now she's normal, whatever that means. And so her fluid going through her nephron is normal. Make sense? By the way, the number's 125. I'm never going to ask you that on a test, but that 125 is roughly how much it is. So notice what hooks up to Susie's arm. What's on her arm?
Blood pressure cuff.
Blood pressure reading, because we just mentioned that blood pressure relates to this. So I'm going to increase her blood pressure by making her exercise. What do you think happens to her GFR if she were to raise her blood pressure through exercise? A vote for going up? Stone cold silence. Let's try it. So we're going to exercise. Her blood pressure climbs. Watch the GFR. What happened? It went up. Yes, let's write that down. So an increase in blood pressure increases GFR, because blood pressure directly factors to GFR. So I feel a graph coming on. So let's do a graph. I'm going to graph GFR over time. I'm going to increase her blood pressure. I'm going to exercise Julie. And what did her GFR do?
Up.
It went up. All right? Because I'm increasing blood pressure, GFR should climb, just like it did. Make sense? Do that just a little bit here. All right. Let's do that. Try that. Okay. So tell me from the first day of 231, when graphs go up, you know the next thing that's going to happen is what?
Come down.
They have to go down, negative feedback, right? So how can your body lower GFR if she's exercising? Because her blood pressure is high. Say that loud. Now it's not loud enough. Right. We're going to change the blood flow. So if you notice, it says click the afferent arteriole. What happened to that blood vessel?
Constricted.
Got smaller. So when GFR goes up, I'm going to constrict or shorten or reduce the afferent arteriole at the nephron. So that makes the in pipe smaller. So if less fluid is getting to the nephron, what would happen in GFR?
Goes down.
It has to go down because there's less fluid over time. So you notice her GFR meter went back to normal. So she's still exercising, her blood pressure is still high, but her kidneys are letting less fluid in to keep GFR normal. Make sense? Okay? So you know where this is going to go next.
That's why you have to poop when you exercise?
Not this, no. That's a homework question, I think, isn't it? Someone wrote that down. Okay. So now I'm going to do the reverse. I'm going to make her normal again. Now we're going to relax her. We're going to lower her blood pressure by making her go to sleep. Okay? What did her blood pressure do? Went down. What did her GFR do? It went down as well. So on the board of power, we're going to put that. So if I lower blood pressure, that will lower GFR. So I'm going to do that on the graph. I'm going to lower your blood pressure because you're sleeping. GFR goes down because you're asleep. All right? So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with having low GFR? Yeah, look over here, right? We're supposed to filter wastes. So if I have low GFR, I'm going to have less filtration, less removal of waste. That's called dying, right? So how can your kidneys increase filtering when you're asleep? Very good. We're going to dilate the afferent arteriole. We're going to open the pipe. More fluid gets in, GFR should climb. Let's see if that's true. Click on the afferent arteriole. Yep, it got bigger, more fluid gets in, and GFR climbs back up. So put that on our graph. So even though her blood pressure stayed high or stayed low, the kidney was able to control what happened. So fancy word for this. This is called local control or local regulation. The kidney kept its own GFR level without messing with the rest of you.
How long does that usually take?
Minutes. So it happened pretty quickly. Right? So even though she's sleeping, the kidney can still filter 125 milliliters a minute without waking you up. Because the blood pressure doesn't have to change to this. To show you how this works, this is not anatomically correct. Right? That represents blood pressure. So he's going to push on the blood vessels because he's big blood pressures. I can watch this all night. Better than Survivor. Yeah. So what's the blood vessel doing as he pushes on it? It's shrinking. So as the pressure goes up, the blood vessel will automatically shrink down, which is that local control. And you know how the Romans felt in the later games, just watch them get hurt. You don't care. Let me know when you want them to be better.
I feel like this is like the Olive Garden cheese grating thing.
Yeah.
Doing stuff.
Just tell me when to stop. Okay. Like I said, I'll watch it all night.
I give up. You win.
Want to see it again?
Yes.
So then as pressure goes down, the blood vessels expand, right? So that's that local control. You didn't have to do anything with blood pressure, and the nephrons were able to control their own rate without you having to wake up or go to sleep. Pretty cool. How do they do that? Magic. So actually, to be formal, there's a stretch receptor located in the junctions between these cells. So as this pressure pushes them, they begin to stretch. That forces the smooth muscle to bind and begin to contract. So it's a calmodulin calcium binding type of thing. So the smooth muscle just contracts the minute the stretch receptors say there's too much pressure. It's cool. So it's totally a local within the cells. Kind of cool. You okay on that GFR thing? So that's regulating how much filtration you do of all the small things. So let's go back then to our case. We figured out what was filtered, small stuff. Question 2, what was reabsorbed? Let's go line by line. Was glucose reabsorbed?
Yes.
Vote for yes. So want to say no? Want to say no? I can't get you. Let's see. So it entered the filtrate. How much was in the toilet? Where'd it go? It had to go back into my body, otherwise it would have been in the urine. So the only way I can explain that was it had to be reabsorbed. It left the nephron before the urine and went back in the blood. Make sense? So glucose was reabsorbed. Can you name something else that was reabsorbed up there?
Sodium.
Sodium can be reabsorbed. It's a variable. That means it could be low, which means it entered and I didn't pee it. What else could be reabsorbed?
Potassium.
Potassium could have been reabsorbed. Those were 0. It would have been they left my filtrate and went back in my blood. Okay. How about urea? Was urea reabsorbed?
No.
No?
Yeah.
How'd you know it was no? It is a no. How do you know it's not reabsorbed?
Because it's still there.
It's still there, and notice it's even higher. Right? So that meant it's still there. So that means it was not reabsorbed. How about uric acid? Was it reabsorbed? Nope. How about water?
Maybe.
Could have been. So let's put those together. Why were those things reabsorbed? Why would you reabsorb sugar and salt and water? Because I need them. Very good. So the stuff you're going to reabsorb is what your body wants to keep, what is needed, what you want, what you need. Right? What you deserve is a different question. Right? So everything small ends up in the nephron. I take back the things I want to keep. Why would you want to keep sugar?
Energy.
Energy, right? ATP, right? So electrolytes, 231, neurons, all that fun stuff. So I don't want to urinate out my salt and my sugar, so I bring it back in. I reabsorb. Okay. Make sense? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little animation of that reabsorption idea. It's right here. It's actually made for a high school. It's kind of cool. So here's a kidney. We're going to zoom in. Eventually a big giant nephron will appear. There's a big giant nephron. So that's the thing that does the work, right? Click a nephron. I'm clicking the nephron. All right, so we have this little game. So to get your bearings, the blood's this red stuff over here. Blood in, blood out, like it says. This is the nephron. The toilet bowl's down here somewhere, right? So I have the nephron, I have the blood, and I'm going to look at these processes on different chemicals. So let's do protein. Protein would be a little green ball. So where do you think the protein would go as this animation runs? Where should it go, or where should it not go?
Should
Not
stay
go in the
using-
nephron.
Should stay in the blood. Why should protein stay in the blood?
It's too big.
It's usually too big. So let's watch that. Start. Still in blood?
Yeah.
Yep. It stayed, that's blood in there. It didn't leave the blood and enter this nephron. It's still in the bloodstream. Because it's too big. It should not enter the nephron. So it's going to go in and then come out. Make sense? Okay. Let's try something with a little more excitement. Glucose. So where should glucose go?
Into the nephron.
Let's find out.
Into the nephron and back into the blood.
Where's glucose?
The
The
nephron.
nephron, because we told, it's small, right? It can enter, it can filtrate. Where do you expect it to go now?
Back into the blood.
Let's find out. Ooh. Ah. It ended up back in the blood because I'm reabsorbing it. Right? It left the nephron and went back into the blood. You see that one okay? All right, let's try sodium. I'm just going to play it, see if you can figure out where it's going to go. It's fast little guy, isn't it?
Cool.
Whoa! Okay, explain that.
You had too much sodium, so some of it was waste, and you kept some.
Right, so remember it said variable, right? So some of the sodium is being reabsorbed, some of it is not, right? But I can still see that process. So sodium has some variability, but still it went from the nephron and some went back in the bloodstream. And we'll learn next week the hormonal system of that one.
What's with the floater?
He has a floater, we'll talk about that next week too. That's the Lupa Henley. Okay, let's try
Urea.
water. Filtrate because it's small. Looks like it's got reabsorbed, right? Because I want to keep it. But not all of it because it's variable. Right? So, but I did see that it went from the nephron. Look at that guy, he's better. Right?
Just kidding.
Just kidding. Okay, so now we'll do urea. Urea is a waste product, so I expect it not to be reabsorbed, right? So it's filtered because it's small. Yell when you see it reabsorbed. Darn it. Right? Because it's a waste product. You don't need it. You expect it not to be reabsorbed. So if I click all these together,
Yes.
with all 5 of your eyes,
Waiting for
right?
it.
That's what your data table is showing you, is that animation in numbers.
Holy crap.
Is this oxygenated blood or deoxygenated?
This is oxygenated blood here. So the nephrons are all oxygenated. Because they're arterioles. They're an in and out arterial, not an in and out arterial venal. Make sense? Okay, so that's that whole idea of filtration and reabsorption. So let's figure out then where we're at. So we had A, we filtered. B, we reabsorbed. For question 3, it asks which things did C. So which chemicals on your data table did we secrete? Okay, one name one of them.
Sodium, potassium.
Well, we could have, or these two, right? Look at the number. You added 74 more before you peed it. Well, how in the world can you add more? The only way I can add more is to add more in secretion. So why am I adding more to urea and uric acid?
Because they're waste products.
They're a waste product I don't want. How's that for scientific? So now you have the 3 rules of the kidney. I'm going to take small stuff in, reabsorb the stuff I want or keep or desire, whatever you want to use it, and the stuff that I don't want I'm going to pump out because I don't want it. And you add that together, your urine is a mathematical relationship between those.
So the things you don't want already come out in filtration. So secretion
Right.
just pumps more of them
Pumps
out?
more out, yes.
Okay.
Or adds to it. We'll do an animation of that. Right? So I'm reabsorbing the stuff I want, I'm getting rid of the stuff I don't. So if I actually look at this picture again, and look at the key for it, some magic words underlined in green. Filtration, blah, 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 smaller, right? Reabsorption, blah, 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 needed. This stuff, hey, drugs are always bad. Boom. Stuff I don't want, right? Possibly. Make sense? Those are the 3 steps for the nephron. Small stuff, keep what you want, get rid of the rest. So I'm going to show you an animation of those steps one more time. Not him. Okay, so in these animations, to get your bearings, this is after we've filtered. So this is talking about stuff after it's in the nephron. So this thing on the left, tubular lumen, that means in the nephron. Over here, off screen on the right, there's the blood vessels over there. So I like to say this is the P and this is me, right? That's how I use it. This is nephron, body's over there. So if something goes from the left side to the right side, it's going from the nephron back into my body. So what process would that be?
Reabsorption.
Reabsorption. If something goes from the right side to the left side, it'd be doing what? Secretion, because it's going back into the nephron. So tell me from biology 112, and every other class you've had, what these big square things are. You see here. Channels, right? Transport proteins, whatever. So remember biology 112, that's how you get through a membrane. So I'm going to click the sodium channel. So the red balls are sodium. What process is the sodium doing?
Reabsorption.
It's reabsorption because it's leaving the P and going to me. So it's leaving the nephron and going back toward my bloodstream, which is off screen to the right. Does that make sense? Because I want sodium. Sodium is useful. I want to keep it. Try this one. Okay, tell me what's going on in that one.
Reabsorption.
Is it reabsorption or secretion? Reabsorption. What is being reabsorbed?
Sodium and glucose.
Sodium and glucose, because they're both going from the lumen toward my body. Why would you do glucose? Because it's energy. Why do you do sodium? Because your nerves like it. All right, so I'm reabsorbing something I want. Different enzyme, different channel. I'm still reabsorbing it. Try this one.
Reabsorption
Go for reabsorption.
and secretion.
Go for and secretion. Is it reabsorption or is it secretion?
It's
Both.
both.
Both, right? So what thing there is being reabsorbed?
Hydrogen.
Sodium.
Reabsorbed is
Sodium.
sodium. What thing is being secreted?
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen ions are going this way. If you remember on the exam you just took, what do hydrogen ions make your body become? Acidic, and you don't like acids, so one way you can get rid of them is to put them in your pee, add it to your urine. So you're going to secrete hydrogen ions or acidity through the urine. So look at the pH number. The pH is dropping in your urine because you're adding acids to it, right? Which we'll do more of next week. But this is showing how my nephron is doing that. Different channels are letting stuff in or out. Right? So we're going to do an analogy of that. This is not anatomically correct. But your nephron is this little conveyor here. The toilet bowl's down here where it says waste. These represent those channels. And I have sugar coming down the pipe. Because it's small enough to be filtered. So what are they doing?
Filtering it.
They're reabsorbing it, right? They're taking it out of my filtrate. And this pellet's eventually going to go back in my body as bloodstream. So they're reabsorbing my sugar. Let me know when you're done watching this, right?
How high will it go?
No, just keep going. This is better than Netflix. They'll just keep showing the same thing over and over. Okay, so So now I'm going to increase the amount of sugar in your bloodstream. And sugar is small enough to get into your nephron. So what do you think you'll see if I increase the sugar in the blood, in the filtrate?
More waste.
Let's find out. Must be a union job. Very good right there. Okay. So if you work in a nursing home, right, people that say they're spilling over sugar, you'll hear that phrasing, because that's literally what they're meaning, is if I have more sugar than my body needs or wants, the body lets it spill over into the urine, so you urinated it out, right? And what disease do you have when you have too much sugar, your body doesn't want it anymore? A diabetic. That's why you're checking your patient's urine, because this proves the urine will tell you what's in their blood. If they have too much blood sugar, you don't need it, you let it spill over into the urine. So they're urinating sugar because you don't reabsorb what you already have too much of. Right? So the logic of a urinalysis, if you know what I should absorb and what I don't absorb, I can diagnose you with your pee. That'll tell me everything that's in your blood that's small that you want and don't want. Right? What you'll do on Saturday is you're going to do a urinalysis. And this is one thing you're looking for, is you have sugar in your pee. It means you have way too much, which means something, right? That's the logic, is you're overwhelming the reabsorptive channels.
Is that a pretty fast process? So for instance, let's say if you
Yeah.
have a pretty low sugar diet, and then you went and did your urine analysis, it would show that. I mean, does it?
Yeah, that's why the doctor tells you to fast first. You know, don't eat after 8 p.m.
Okay.
Because if you ate something at 10 p.m., the kidneys could still be splashing that over. So the idea is if you wait 10 hours or whatever, you've already burned the sugar, so it shouldn't be in your urine. The only reason it'd be in your urine is if you have too much anyway. That's what they do. Yeah.
But this process obviously isn't enough to bring you back to a normal level, because that's why you have like damage.
That's right. So when you're diabetic, you can't pee enough, therefore you eventually start building it up everywhere. Right? So that's where all the damage is. So normally your body would just try to pee it out as often as you can. So if you go to a birthday party and you scuff on a bunch of cake like me, you'll do this for an hour or so. You'll start peeing sugar because you have too much, but then it should eventually go away because you got all the sugar out and you're no longer eating cake every 2 seconds. That's what I do. Make sense? This is that logic of the reabsorption process. Right? So what I'm going to do, which one? This one here. This one. So here's a picture that you are going to take with your phone because you are required to know this. So take a picture of this with your various social media device.
Is this in our book?
You have one similar in your book. This is a little different model, but it's similar. It's also on the internet. While you're taking a picture, I'm going to erase this stuff because you have to know what this is saying and how it's saying it. So we'll rewrite it on the board.
Like it.
Where on the internet can you find it, or what would you look up on?
I would just look under Nephron, like Google Images, Nephron processes, Nephron chemicals. I think there's a title on it. Hold
Isn't
on.
it on your webpage?
It's somewhere.
Overall.
Yeah. So let's see what it says. It says officially sites of reabsorption secretion in Nephron. But if you just type in Nephron diagram, you'll probably get a bunch. Actually. All right. So you have to, thou shalt know, is what the college says. You're supposed to know where in the nephron you do what to whom. So I'm going to turn on one of the lights. Okay, we're going to break our nephron down into 5 parts. Part 1 is the glomerulus. That is right here. So part number 1 is this glomerulus thing. Part number 2 is abbreviated as the PCT. Anyone guess what PCT stands for? Proximal convoluted tubule. So the PCT is this first white box. Then the third thing is called the loop. It's the big thing in the center. So number 3 we'll call the loop of Henle. Number 4, area 4, is this next white box. It's called the DCT because it's distal. And I'm going to run out of room, so I'm going to put number 5 over here. The last one, the thing that looks like a fishbone on the right, it's called your collecting duct. It's where you collect. You label it right here. So we have the glomerulus at the front, PCT, loop, DCT, duct. Those are the 5 areas of a nephron. And you're supposed to know what happens in each one and how it happens. So, in the glomerulus, in the first part, number 1, what's happening here? Look at the thing next to it.
Filtrate.
Filtration. Because that's where the blood and the nephron meet. So glomerulus is filtration. That's the only thing that happens in the glomerulus is filtration. The Bowman's capsule glomerulus, corpuscle, whatever word you want to use. So we're going to say filtration. Okay. The PCT, right here. So you're going to look at the arrows and look at their direction. They're all pointing up. That doesn't help. But where they're pointing. These upper ones are going from the nephron out. These bottom ones are going from somewhere in. So tell me the upper ones. If they're going out of the nephron, that process is reabsorption. So the PCT does some reabsorption. Because it's leaving the nephron and entering the body again. You're supposed to know what is reabsorbed and how. So if we look at the things above it, we're going to write those down. So sodium is reabsorbed at the PCT. HCO3. Can anyone tell me what HCO3 minus was? That's that bicarbonate buffer we learned for the last 2 weeks. So we can call this sodium. You can call this buffer. That's fine. H2O, hopefully you know that's water. Right? And we have glucose. That's what glucose. Oh, yeah. Glucose and amino acids. Sugar and amino acids. So here's a listing of what's being reabsorbed in my PCT. And then PCC says, thou shalt know how they're reabsorbed. So you're going to look at the color of the arrows. They matter. So we have the orange arrows and the blue arrows. So orange arrows mean active transport. Blue arrows mean passive. So the sodium is active. Remember your biology 112, it means the ATP, right? All that fun stuff. Tell me about the buffer. The buffer is a blue arrow. That means it is passive. Diffusion, osmosis, those kind of things that do not require energy. So that would be diffusion for that one. Water, blue arrow. That means passive. That would mean osmosis. Glucose and amino acids is an orange arrow. That means active for both of them. So you're required to know the process, the chemical, and how it moves, active or passive. But you're not done. So what else is happening in the PCT? Look at these two. Secretion, because they're going in. So we have, holy crap, secretion. Also occurs in the PCT. What chemicals are secreted in the PCT? I have H plus and poisons. / drugs. Poisons and drugs are secreted in the PCT. So acid and drugs. How are they secreted? Is it active or passive?
Active.
It has to be active. Secretion is always, always active because you're pumping against the gradient. You're pumping out against the fusion. So it's always an active process for this class today. So I have reabsorption and secretion of these chemicals this way. Okay, that leaves us at the loop. In here. Okay, what processes occur at the loop?
Passive and active.
How about you give me if it's reabsorption or secretion first?
Reabsorption.
Reabsorption, you sure?
Yeah.
Yes. So the loop is doing only reabsorption because all the arrows point out. What chemicals are you reabsorbing?
2O, sodium.
I have sodium, I have water, right? We'll ignore the chlorine. How? How's the water getting put out? It's a blue arrow. That means passive. The sodium, how's it getting out?
Active and passive.
Active and passive. So the sodium has two different mechanisms to be reabsorbed. One is an active ATP process, and one is not. And that ends the loop. The loop only has two chemicals doing one thing two different ways. All right, DCT time. Look at the DCT and you tell me, is it reabsorption or secretion? It's both, right? Same as the PCT. So we have reabsorption, be our first one. Okay, tell me what's reabsorbed and how. Just look at the screen. Sodium
Buffer.
and buffer. So sodium, NaHCO3. Now to figure out how. So how are they being reabsorbed?
Active.
Active. So I'm going to use an A just because I'm running out of room. So they're both actively reabsorbed. They're being put into my bloodstream, but they're doing actively. What else happens at my DCT?
Secretion.
Secretion happens at my DCT. So you notice the PCT and DCT are really similar in terms of the functions they're doing. What is being secreted at my DCT?
Poisons and drugs.
Poisons and drugs and acids. And how are they being secreted?
Secretion active.
Has to be active because that's the answer. So next time you fail your, blood test for the pot you smoke, then you know exactly what to blame. You're going to blame your nephrons right here. Because when you smoke, THC is something your body doesn't want. So what your body does is it pumps it into your urine, and that's why you failed your test. That's the logic of a drug test. You're relying on secretion to get the stuff out of your body into the thing for your employer. Make sense? All right, so let's do the collecting duct. What things are moving in the collecting duct? Is it being reabsorbed or secreted?
Reabsorbed.
We have reabsorption. What's being reabsorbed?
Water.
Water, sodium, and urea, which we'll talk about next week. That seems peculiar, but you do reabsorb some urea. How are you reabsorbing them? Let's see, I see different colored arrows. So the water is passive. Sodium is active. And the urea is passive. Okay, you're going to memorize this board and that picture, as well as GFR and kind of filtration for next week's quiz.
What?
Make sense? So memorize that. Thou shalt know.